People love to say, keep race out of sports. But let's be real, sports and racism, they've never been separate. From the very beginning, race determined who could play, where they could play, and how they were treated. And if you think that that's not still happening, let's go through some receipts. So let's start with baseball, America's so-called pastime. In 1887, the International League officially banned black players, and by 1890, professional baseball was fully segregated. That forced black athletes to form the Negro Leagues in 1920. Players like Satchel Paige, Cool Papa Bell, Josh Gibson, they dominated, but they were denied the same pay, pensions, and recognition that white players got. And here's the real kicker. Because MLB excluded them, the stats from the Negro Leagues weren't even considered until 2020. And once they were finally integrated, turns out Josh Gibson, not Babe Ruth, is the greatest baseball player of all time. But since white players never had to face top-tier black competition, we'll never know if many of them truly deserved their Hall of Fame status. Does that sound familiar? Does that kind of sound like what they think DEI is? And it wasn't just stats that they ignored. Negro League players were denied pensions that they rightfully earned because of racism and barriers set by MLB. And it took until 2023 for some of these players to finally get access to the pensions that they have been entitled to for decades. Again, this is how white supremacy rewrites history and actively keeps power in the hands of a select few. And it didn't stop with the Negro Leagues. Just recently, baseball legend Reggie Jackson gave an emotional interview where he talked about the racism that he faced throughout his career. He said that he wouldn't wish what he went through on any athlete. Let's think about that one. One of the greatest to ever play the game is saying that the discrimination and the hostility that he endured made his success feel not worth it. He talked about how he was hated simply for being black and outspoken, for being confident in his abilities. And what's wild? That same playbook is still being used against black athletes today. The 1968 Olympics gave us one of the most powerful protests in sports history. U.S. sprinters Tommy Smith and John Carlos won gold and bronze in the 200-meter race. But instead of just standing there for the anthem, they raised their fists in a black power salute. And for that, they were banned from the Olympics, and they faced harassment for years. For years. But let's go back even further to 1912. Jim Thorpe, Native American athlete from the Sac and Fox Nation, won 2 gold medals in the decathlon and the pentathlon. He was called the greatest athlete in the world. But just a year later, the International Olympic Committee stripped him of his medals, claiming that he had once played semi-pro baseball. Meanwhile, white athletes did the exact same thing and faced no punishment. Thorpe's medals weren't restored until 1983, 30 years after his death. Another example of how racism rewrites history in favor of white people. Again, does this not sound like what they think DEI is? Let's talk about Wataru Misaka, the first non-white player in the NBA. He was a Japanese-American point guard who broke the color barrier in 1947, before Jackie Robinson did in baseball. But his career was also cut short. Why? Anti-Asian racism was at an all-time high after World War II, and many teams refused to take him on. Despite his talent, he only played 3 games before he was pushed out of the league. And it wasn't just basketball. Anti-Asian racism kept Chinese American players out of professional baseball for decades. In the late 1800s, Chinese immigrant teams dominated local leagues, but because of the Chinese Exclusion Act and racist hiring policies, they were never given a fair shot at the majors. It wasn't until 2005, yes, 2005, that the first Chinese-born player, Cao Qin-wei, made it to the MLB. Again, does this not sound like what white people think DEI is? Roberto Clemente was one of the greatest baseball players of all time, but he faced constant racism because he was Afro-Latino. Reporters mocked his accent, called him lazy, and treated him like he wasn't as smart as white players. And he spent his career as an activist fighting for Latino and black athletes, and tragically he died in a plane crash while delivering aid to earthquake victims in Nicaragua. His legacy proves that sports have always been more than just about the game. And let's not forget how Latino boxers had to fight twice as hard to get respect. Even though fighters like Julio Cesar Chavez and Oscar de la Hoya were breaking records, they were constantly told that they weren't real champions until they beat white fighters. And when they did win, they were still dismissed. That's racism at play in real time. Serena and Venus Williams changed the face of tennis, but not without facing relentless racism and misogyny. From the moment that they stepped onto the court, They were called too aggressive, too muscular, not feminine enough. Serena in particular has been compared to animals, disrespected by officials, and accused of cheating in ways white players never have been. And this isn't just history, it's happening now, okay? Angel Reese is one of the best young players in the WNBA, and she's held to a completely different standard than her white counterparts. When she shows confidence, she's called arrogant or classless. But when white players do the same exact thing, it's passion. This is the exact same playbook that they used against Serena. It's racism, plain and simple, okay? So the next time that someone says, keep race out of sports, remind them that sports and racism have never been separate. Whether it's Jim Thorpe being stripped of his medals, Wataru Misaka being pushed out of the NBA, Reggie Jackson being hated for being confident, or Angel Reese being unfairly criticized today, race has always dictated who gets opportunities, who gets celebrated, who's the villain, who's the hero, and who gets erased. Ignoring that history doesn't erase that fact. It just means you're choosing not to see it. And maybe you should ask yourself why. And I already know some of y'all are going to run in my comments talking about how we're playing victim, playing the color card. I'm wrong, but let's do the bare minimum here, okay? If you actually have something to say, at least research what I just said first. Ask yourself why that happened. Connect the dots to history, right? Because we know about Jim Crow. We know when segregation happened. We know about all the legislation that was passed that was racist. Once you do that, then we can talk. But if you simply have you're wrong with nothing to back it up, troll. You're a troll. Troll. Oh, and if you feel the need to comment, well, so-and-so white athlete is just a better player than so-and-so black athlete or athlete of color, blah, 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 go ahead and rewatch this video because you completely missed the point. Get your notebook out, get your listening ears on. It's that simple. So the next time someone tries to rewrite history, remember, it's on us to set the record straight. Things didn't change because people finally saw the light or had a change of heart or they've always been good people. They changed because people relentlessly spoke out and called a spade a spade. Don't let your white fragility get in the way of that. It's on us to keep doing this, to keep speaking out and being relentless about it, okay? Until next time, y'all.